Pac-Man World series was a small series from the Pac-Man franchise. These games put Pac-Man into the world of 3D platforming with 3 grand adventures, with each game trying something unique. The first game had Pac-Man traveling through Ghost Island to save his family that were taken by this mysterious doppelganger named Pac-Man. The second game had Pac-Man traveling out the land to find the golden fruit to stop this evil ghost. And Pac-Man World 3 had him going through mysterious worlds to stop this evil scientist named Irwin. Unfortunately with World 3, this was a different case compared to the last two, as this was supposed to be a different project that became the third entry, and unfortunately it would be the final game in the series, excluding a kart racer game. I've always wanted Pac-Man World to return, but it really seemed unlikely, especially when they had the soft reboot of the series with the ghostly adventures and such. However, starting in 2017, there were more and more classic franchises making a massive comeback in some way. Mario, of course, has his grand 3D adventures along with Sonic, and with that year, they had the return of Crash Bandicoot, and the next year they had Spyro. And then months went on, more and more franchises came back from the dead, including now to this day with Rayman coming back for Mario & Rabbids. And so with all these classic series returning, all eyes were hoping for the Pac-Man World series to get a revival as well. And as of 2020, Namco has been recently re-releasing a lot of their older games. With this year, they released a massive bombshell that they're actually bringing back Klonoa, which was really exciting because I really like Klonoa 1 and really want to play Klonoa 2, so that's great. But for Pac-Man World, in late June, Nintendo released a Nintendo Direct partner showcase. And in that Direct, they announced a massive bombshell that Namco is remaking the original Pac-Man World, which really blew my mind because I always wanted a comeback for the Pac-Man World series, and to see that finally happen on Switch was just really exciting. So exciting that I spent the entirety of July making a retrospective on all the Pac-Man World games. With this game, we don't have Namco Home Tech anymore since that hasn't been a thing for a really long time. This time we have Now Productions working on the remake. I was not familiar with this studio, so I decided to look up and realize, I actually played some of their games. This was the studio who works with various companies throughout the years. These are the developers who worked on the Mario Baseball games, for example. They also worked on Sonic Riders and the Klonoa GBA games, so they have a pretty good resume under their belt. This was actually not their first with the Pac-Man series, as they were the ones who made the Pac-Man Museum compilation earlier this year. And it all leads up to this remake. The hype for this game was really weird. It was announced during the Nintendo Direct, and it kinda stopped after that. Eventually they showed more gameplay of it out of an anime expo of all places. I never expect to be watching an anime expo stream to watch Pac-Man. And then a few months later, they just casually released the launch trailer, where they showed the freaking final boss of the game. Like, what? Imagine if Nintendo does that for one of their mainline Mario. Oh. But anyway, this was a game that got me really hyped. It's been so long since we have a Pac-Man World game. So to commemorate this special occasion and conclude the Pac-Man World retrospective, I decided to bring in another Pac-Man fan.
Hey everyone, Demetri here, and I'm honored to be part of Gold Connor's Pac-Man World Re-Pac review. To say I'm a fan of Pac-Man would be quite the understatement, because I've been a Pac fan even longer than I've been a fan of Mario. To find a Pac-Man fan bigger than I am would be very difficult to do. That is, unless you find Soshi the Yoshi or Tim Christ. But regardless, when I found out that Pac-Man World was getting a remake after much fan demand, I was super excited. So the question is Pac back? Or should he just pack his bags?
We'll see, Demetri. We'll see. Well, with out of the way, let's get started. So with this remake, it starts off with the exact same thing, where the family gets kidnapped, but this time it's from the ghost. And I find it funny is that they have a hard time recognizing that that's not Pac-Man. Like, come on, it's Pac-Man. You should know about Pac-Man by now. He's the one who's been eating you for years now. And that's not the only thing that's different. The family itself has changed from the original game as well. Most notably is that Miss Pac-Man has been replaced by this new character named Pac-Mom. So if you don't know, Miss Pac-Man, despite being a Pac-Man character, wasn't necessarily owned by Namco, as Miss Pac-Man was owned by a completely different studio, as Namco was just the publisher for it. Namco was going to buy the rights to Miss Pac-Man until the developers sold it to AtGames. If you don't know what they are a notorious studio that makes really cheap mini consoles, with one of their biggest examples being the Sega Genesis Flashback, where not only it is very poorly designed,
and they sound like ass!
So yeah, since Miss Pac-Man played a large part in Pac-Man World, they had to change it in order to make this remake happen. because who knows when Bandai Namco will get the rights to Miss Pac-Man again. But anyway, so the ghost kidnaps the family, and then Pac-Man realizes that their party has been ruined. I kinda miss how they got kidnapped in the original one, where they get kidnapped by various things that foreshadows the level. Like, for example, when the dog gets kidnapped, it's a mummy that kidnaps him that represents him being trapped in the ruins. Or when Professor Pac got kidnapped, he gets abducted by a UFO that signifies that he's in the space level. But anyway, so Pac-Man gets the invitation to go to Ghost Island, and he heads off. Meanwhile, Talkman tells his frustration to the ghost how much they are doing a bad job with this birthday party. It plays out the exact same thing, except this time they're doing a bit of a Animal Crossing-like gibberish. Overall, it's a really well recreation of the cutscene, but I kinda miss the voice acting in the original.
Oh no, you idiots! I wanted gold streamers and red balloons! The DJ stinks, the banners are crooked, and the cake should be chocolate! You're gonna ruin my party!
Boss!
What do you want?
Pac-Man's here on Ghost Island! The Pac-Man!
But even then, the cutscene is still really good in its own right. It's different, but it's still great. Although a moment is silent of Pac-Man's weird scream. But anyway, so Pac-Man enters Ghost Island and we're off. Holy crap, I can't believe this is happening. But anyway, for the gameplay, it's pretty much identical as the original series. Pac-Man can still run, jump, and butt bounce, and do this little rev roll. And they also added a brand new move exclusive to the remake where Pac-Man can do a little flare jump similar to Yoshi's Island. This also reminds me a bit of Crash 4's double jump, where it's very useful to adjust your platforming. Especially when it's the movable platforms, where it's a lifesaver. The other thing I noticed that they changed from the moveset are the pellet bombs, where they're a lot more useful than the original. I always found the original one very situational, but here I end up using it a lot. Which is a really nice change, in my opinion. Another thing returning are the power-up system. The metal power-up will turn Pac-Man into Metal Pac-Man, which is very useful of going underwater. They also added a brand new metal variation of enemies that only Metal Pac-Man can defeat. Which is honestly good, it gives you a good incentive to get the medal. The second one is this one where Pac-Man turns into a literal bomb, which I barely noticed in this game as well. And lastly, we have the Power Pellets, which plays a different role compared to the original. Demeech?
One of the things that's new in Pac-Man World Re-Pac is the way that the Power Pellets are handled. In the original Pac-Man world, Pac-Man could obtain a Power Pellet, but he'd remain the same appearance. But in Re-Pac, Pac-Man becomes a gigantic version of Pac-Man, similar to how Mario uses the Mega Mushroom. The main difference, however, being that Pac-Man uses his classic design. It's really cool to see, and he'll chase the poor ghosts down and eat them alive. Yet again, they went after him on his birthday, so it's hard to feel any sympathy for them.
Yeah, although if I find myself being chased by a giant Pac-Man, I would freaking panic as well, because that would be fucking terrifying. But continue.
Once again, you'll be traveling through 6 different areas of the Ghost Island. However, there is a hub world in the game that's brand new with quality of life improvements. There are teleporters added, which really cut down on the pack tracking when you're trying to 100% the game. There are 6 worlds in total, all having really cool theming, but if I had to choose some favorites, it would be the Space World and the Final World. The level design in the game is also excellent. For a 3D platformer, the levels might seem a bit basic. It's definitely a linear 3D platformer with not much exploration, but that doesn't stop the game from having many collectibles. You'll be collecting fruits, Pac-Man letters, as well as Galaxians, which can have you unlock the mazes. These mazes in the game really are nice to have because of the variety, and they play like classic Pac-Man, albeit much easier. It also takes advantage of the giant Pac-Man, so there's a lot of variety here.
Yeah, and what I like too about the maze levels is that they add a quality of life improvement where, if you die, you don't lose any lives. Which frankly was a real annoyment in the original, especially the first one where you're swimming underwater with slow water physics. Now, for the final main collectible are the Trademark Keys. In the original, in certain levels, there is a special key that's used to open a cage for your Pac family. But in the remake, they're in a special door where you need to find a special fruit. So you're pretty much getting a key to get a key. So yeah, overall the gameplay is really spot on in the original, and honestly, it is really refined compared to the original. I really love Pac-Man's control in this game. It's really fun and very snappy. And the level design in this game is pretty good, just like the original. This game can give you a good challenge, but I wouldn't say in the levels of something like Crash Bandicoot or something. Oh, and if you're having trouble with this game, you can also turn on easy mode, which will give out invisible platforms to make things a lot easier. And as for the bosses, well, they pretty much play mostly the same as the original. Although mostly. In the original game, Pac-Man mostly appeared in the beginning and end, but here he has a much bigger presence where he activates the boss fight. This really emphasizes how strong Pac-Man is, as he can just literally build a robot out of nothing instantly. So the first boss fight plays exactly the same as you try to deflect cannonballs from Windbag. Holy crap, Anubis Rex is actually good now. I hated this boss fight in the original, as it felt very unfair, but here they actually give you a good amount of legroom to play through the game. The Space Student section plays the same, although it's a bit easier compared to the original. The Clown Racing minigame plays exactly the same, although this time you're playing it through first person instead of a bird's eye view.
The one boss that had a significant change has got to be Chrome Keeper. Instead of using the metal power-up to press the buttons to drop something on him, all Pac-Man has to do is grab a metal power-up and do a rev roll to attack. And just like Pac-Man, he has a really cool new design. In the original game, he looked a bit goofy, but here, he means business.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that they changed it too, because I found the original version really boring a lot of times, as you're just waiting to get the buttons and such. But here it's a lot more engaging and frantic as he shoots freaking missiles at Pac-Man. And now, what would you say about the presentation?
The presentation of Pac-Man World Re-Pac looks really good regardless of what platform you're playing it on. I primarily have played it on Switch, but if you play it on PC, it looks great as well. It also is 60 frames per second regardless of what platform you're playing it on, but in the Switch version, you're gonna have to go into settings and change it to performance mode. Why this isn't the default is beyond me, but once that setting's on, you're in for a great time. It really showcases just how well they remade the game. Another thing I like is with the game over screen, Pac-Man's name is changed to Pac-Man, which is a really nice detail, and Pac-Man's redesign is fantastic. Bandai Namco, if you're watching this, I know you love merchandise, and if you make a Pac-Man figure, I will be the first to buy it.
Yeah, I do agree, Pac-Man looks really good in this game. In the original, he looks like a literal hunk of junk plastered together, but here he's a lot more sleek, he's a lot more menacing. Frankly, I am very impressed in this remake. A lot of remakes usually stumble, but this one really shines, and does something what a remake should, improve the original game. The presentation in this game is very stellar. I really like the cute little details like Pac-Man's idle animations and the little ghost costumes they have. However, there's only one problem I have with the remake's presentation. Now, the soundtrack in the original game was pretty good and very catchy a lot of times. However, in the remake, they still use the same soundtrack, but it's very compressed sometimes. It felt like they just downloaded the songs from an online site instead of going for the original composer. On that note, they didn't even credit the original people who worked on this game, by the time I'm making this video, because recently Namco announced that they'll add the credits in later on. But still, it really should have been in the base game, because they're the ones who made the game that they're making it on. But still, overall, Pac-Man World Re-Pac has a stellar presentation, and it's really faithful to the original. But anyway, so with everything out of the way, time to wrap up this adventure. So as Pac-Man traverses through the spooky island, he finds himself in the center of the island, which is a haunted mansion. Inside the mansion, Pac-Man finds himself in Pac-Man's lair. Pac-Man, having enough of Pac-Man's shenanigans, he decides to face off Pac-Man once and for all. And this is the final battle. It plays a lot differently than the original. In the original, it was pretty much Pac-Man versus Pac-Man, as Pac-Man can do Pac-Man's moves. The first phase plays exactly like the original, as Pac-Man needs to fight Pac-Man, although he is hooking himself with a jetpack this time. But when we get to the second phase, he grabs a metal power-up and turns into Metal Pac-Man. The only way to defeat him is to grab a metal power-up as well, as he shoots cannonballs in the background. In the final phase, he grabs 2 power pellets and eats it and turns into Giant Pac-Man. The only way to attack him is to stun him by attacking his feet and jumping onto him. And once he goes down, Pac-Man has one final blow as he slams Pac-Man into his birthday cake. On top of the birthday cake has a power pellet. Pac-Man eats the power pellet and munches Pac-Man down. And just like the original, it reveals that Pac-Man is this little ghost named Orson, and he laments why ghosts is never love. And once again, Pac-Man shows no mercy towards Orson. However, that's not the end of this story, because there's something new in Re-Pac. So in the original game, you must save your entire family to fight Pac-Man, but in this remake, you don't have to. So in Re-Pac, they tried to do something interesting.
If you 100% the game, you'll get a new ending where Pac-Man forgives Orson, and he lets the original 4 ghosts join his birthday party.
Yeah, and I really like that. It really gives out a new twist to this classic game, where for years we just see Pac-Man just eats Orson. To see that he actually forgives him in this remake is really cool for new fans. And if you're feeling heartless, they still kept the original where he just eats him. So yeah, Pac-Man World Re-Pac overall is a really good remake. It is honestly the best way to play the original game, since it's on newer consoles, and it refines a lot of aspects from the original game. And the fact that they fix Anubis Rex automatically makes this the best way to play the original. If you're very curious, you can get on the latest consoles for about $30. Yes, $30 to play this game, and it's honestly a great deal in my opinion, because Pac-Man World Re-Pac is honestly a really great 3D platformer. So Demet, what do you think about the game?
It is easily one of my favorite Nintendo Switch games, and my second favorite Switch game of the year. The first one going to another circular glutton, who just so happened to be in a game about a forgotten land. But overall, Pac-Man World Re-Pac is everything I would like from a remake. The gameplay is refined and has a lot of quality of life improvements. The presentation is a complete overhaul, and this game manages to break the modern remake curse that we've seen in many games. Usually these modern remakes will fail due to a variety of reasons. Funnily enough, these remakes are usually re-breaks, such as in the case of Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and Sonic Colors Ultimate, but in Pac-Man World Re-Pac's case, it is truly a remake. And you know what? Pac is back! I want to see more of this.
Yeah, I really love this new era we're in, where most 3D platformers are coming back with either big remakes or returning brand new entries. With this one being on par with the Crash and Spyro remakes, where Spyro in particular was honestly one of my favorite remakes of all time just because how beautiful it looks. So yeah, I highly recommend trying it out if you're very curious on it.
Thanks for having me, Gold Connor. It was great being part of this review. Now in the meantime, what was
That is very bizarre. What the hell was that anyway? I'll just play Mario 64 in the meantime.